Hello, world, and welcome back to another episode of the Millennial Outliers podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Justin Deal, with my right-hand man, Pots and Pans, Tyler Ardron. How you doing today, brother?
Doing awesome, brother. It looks like you're doing awesome. You got the good vibes on today.
I'm saying, good vibes only, good vibes. Best day ever, every day.
Let's get it.
It's more than just a mantra, friends. It's a lifestyle. I live it. I wear it.
Love
I breathe it.
What's it say there? Happiness is a journey, not this guy's killing
it. Says something pretty cool in the background too. All good vibes. Reason being, because I have a good vibe friend in here today. Somebody new to Tyler, but somebody I've actually, I guess I would say newer to my life as well.
Months,
my good friend Jason Braatz of Braatz Wealth Advisors. Thanks so much for being here today, brother.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're going to have some good conversations. So Jason is a beautiful mind in the financial space. He's also very outgoing.
You're a generous guy.
Yeah, beautiful mind, man, this guy.
I mean, we have some pretty cool conversations, and I like the lens that you look at finances and just investing in general. I think it's definitely a little unique, or very unique, I should say, for the market. As you know, financial advisors usually hunt me. Yep. I say no to the vast majority of them, and I think we had like a stepbrothers moment. We became best friends pretty quickly.
Yeah, pretty quick.
And there's obviously a reson for that. But let's jump in. What I don't know a ton about is actually your upbringing. We've talked a little bit about family. I know your immediate family, but I don't know much about what the 5 through 25-year-old Jason went through. So take us back. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, family dynamic, and whatever you like to share.
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Medford. Well, technically born in Willingboro, but I lived in Medford when I was 2 months old on. Right. Grew up in a very religious Christian house. So that kind of framed the way I am in business now. Very, very by the book family, church every Sunday, high moral, compass, that type of thing. So everything kind of growing up, I was very straight and narrow. I was the kid that didn't get in trouble. I knew what I wanted to do from day one. It was like I knew, 5th grade. I was like, I'm going to be an advisor. I saw a television commercial, Morgan Stanley, and I was like, that's it.
Wow.
That's what I'm supposed to be. It was like I had one of those aha moments or a lightning bolt from God or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And, I have a brother and a sister. My sister's actually getting married today or tomorrow, excuse me. So I'm heading out to Pennsylvania after the pod. But, parents have been married for forever and just, great family background. So born and raised, my wife's from Medford as well. 2 daughters. Yeah. Life is good.
I love it. I think that's one of the things, we talk about this from time to time, that we connected the most on. And I think it's rare in business that A, you find people that you really enjoy being around, but B, and more importantly, I think for both of us, have those Christian values.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot tougher nowadays to find people who have standards and morals. A lot of folks are very transactional, and they really don't stand for anything. No, that's a blanket statement. I don't mean that about everybody, but you all know there's plenty of people in your life. So it's very refreshing. We're in a Bible study together. It's great to see how, obviously, like you said, growing up in a family that was so devoted as well, just how you understand the principles of the Bible, how you bring it to life. Yeah. And then from my understanding, you help run worship in your your church,
locally
right?
At Fellowship Alliance. I lead worship a couple times a month. The thing about the Bible that people don't always, know or think about, you can be a Christian, non-Christian. There are principles in the Bible that for business, that for life, they just work, and so obviously we try and live our lives by those things, but I just try and encourage people all the time, whatever your faith is, whatever your background is, there's certain principles, whether it's generosity, whether it's, love, whether it's having patience, whether it's, self-control, all these things are a part of that Christian dynamic that I think is underutilized, let's say. I think people aren't aware of the way they're looking at the world a lot. And I think if you gave yourself a better lens, you'd see things a little bit better,
Yeah, and I think with that, in that same vein, is like, so for me, for example, I grew up Christian and Catholic, but I haven't, I'll be honest, the last 10 years, I haven't been like super into church and like I haven't been spiritually where I want to be, I guess. But I think like the issue nowadays with a lot of people is like they don't have that, like kind of like you were saying, that guidance, right? Or that thing to live by, or just being, being a good person, doing the right thing, being good to your neighbor, like all those types of things. Like in recent years, and really, I guess since I've grown to be an adult, like there's 40 years ago, everybody was in church, right? Like that, now it's not like that. Yeah. And what the issue with that is like people are losing that be good to your neighbor, like all those huge values. So no matter what you believe in, if there is a God, if there isn't a God, like whatever. But the thing about religion is that whole value system and a code to live by that like these people who, you know, maybe don't believe, let's just say, and aren't religious, like they're losing that code too. And like as a civilization, like I just think in the last 50 years, it's people are just mean to people. Like,
and it's post-COVID, I think it's accelerated. I know from just being in front of a large church, watching the people coming in, you know, COVID made every church start to stream. And so now more and more you see people coming less because they can – I had a conversation with one of my docs and he was like, yeah, I saw the video. I watched the video of church. There's something about being there that's different. But people are in social media and all these other things that distract you. You know, the Bible's premise is it's about loving one another, loving your neighbor, where social media's presence is about I am the star of my movie. Everybody else is supporting cast and I'm going to, you know, be the winner, right? And I think that's where you're seeing a lot of that, even with politics. And I have clients on both sides of the aisle, and I think really you've got the hot button issues that affect people, but 99% of people, they want what? They want to be able to afford healthcare, food, housing. They have a family. They want to have a family the way that they want to do it. They want to have kids that are healthy. They just want to have
the same things.
A good quality of life. And then the media and all of the powers that be pull us to the edges so we hate each other. And it's like, no. I think if we look at the biblical principles of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, those things, most people are right there in the middle. You know, and so it's to your point, we are losing it because it's almost been religion's been vilified where you know, there are places that it's been bad if you look through history, obviously. But I think there's a really healthy need for a moral code.
100%. And I think with that too, like, I think there's something in us that needs, you know, that religion, right? So what I see like happening, right, is so if people like move away from religion, right, especially younger people now, like I said, when I grew up, like it was just you went to church, went to CCD, like, and that everybody my age, that was the same thing. Like all my friends were in CCD, right? Everybody in my whole classroom. But like now, like that's not a big thing because what happened was those people grew up and then they didn't, you know, they didn't instill that into their kids. But like why I say I think there's a need for some form of religion is because what's happening is like the ideas are becoming like a religion. Right. So cancel culture. You know, all these different politics. Like politics is more captivating than ever. And I think it's because we're missing this from our lives as a civilization.
And if there's a void, something will fill that void.
You're going to worship something. Unfortunately, in the United States, it's typically the dollar.
No money. Right.
Money is the vast majority of people. That is what they worship, they pray to, they everything. But to your point earlier too, like there is the in-person community of church. When I've shared it with you, I mean, worship, every time we sing, I'm filled with emotion. I catch the Holy Spirit when you're there. When there's a community of people with similar focuses that are all just on the same page, there's like something beautiful about that it almost like, it's not to give it that parallel, but like there's something about the camaraderie of sports that religion just completely amplifies and blows off or blows out of the water. And it just is. It's like to have guidance and faith in something that is so much greater than us and gives us, to your point with the Bible. I had a mentor years ago tell me, this is the best playbook for life, for business. I was like, dude, you're out of your mind. But now 2 years into my faith journey and, you know, still being an infant, but like learning all these and being in the Word more and like really listening and taking notes, you know, when I'm at church, you realize you're like, man, this stuff really spills into everything. Like there's nothing that's really missed. And for the non-believers, I always have the joke. I'm like, hey, if I'm wrong, I just become, you know, just become like soil in the earth. If you're wrong,
Yeah, but also you grow. You know, that whole time you're on this earth, you're a good person.
Absolutely.
Because you have those morals to live by. It's funny. That guy I know says the same thing to me. Actually, he goes, "Listen, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Yeah,
but
and not that big of a deal.
If I'm right,
hell doesn't sound like the thing you want to be wrong about.
Yeah.
I actually had a buddy that really successful guy, and kind of grew up kind of similar to you, kind of Catholic house, wasn't really into faith. And one day on socials, he posted a picture, and I was like, I recognize what the app he's reading, and it was a Bible app, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his picture wasn't about that, but he was reading Proverbs. So I reached out, we started going back and forth, and he's like, not really into my faith a whole lot, but the book of Proverbs is a book of wisdom. And he goes, I just try and live my life by the book of Proverbs. And it just because the principles, and he ended up, going back to church and all that stuff down the line. But, it's 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs. Perfect. Read one a day. And simple things like how to live your life with generosity instead of being cheap. Little principles that will change the way that you look at the world. It'll change the way people look at you, which from a business perspective, I think that's the biggest difference when people sit with me. There's a different comfort level because I'm very open about all my beliefs. I don't care what anybody else's are, but you're going to get Jason. I'm a blunt force trauma kind of a cat, so.
Yeah.
I love that faith is such a big part of your life. So take us through the journey. So a little bit about the family. Now, where'd you go to school? You said obviously as a 5, which is amazing that you've kind of always known what exactly you wanted to do.
Because I saw the commercials too, and I didn't work. It didn't work on me.
Yeah, well, I had a teacher, Miss. I think it was Miss Skoll. I think was her name in 5th grade. We had to do a little thing on what we were going to do with careers. And literally, it was one of those things. I was always the kid that never did his homework and then would scramble to get it done the minute before.
I was like,
I wouldn't study for tests. I always got good grades, but I wouldn't study for tests. I would scramble, right? Mm-hmm. I've always been quick on my feet. That's always been a good thing. And I can always debate someone into the ground if I need to, right? And so literally, I was watching television, and I saw a Morgan Stanley commercial where there was a Morgan Stanley advisor sitting there, and it just hit me like, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be an advisor. I knew young. Okay, growing up in a home with a very strong family and siblings, and I knew I wanted to date to get married. I knew I wanted to have a wife. I knew I wanted to have kids. That was my goal. And so then I started to think, okay, my dad was a very hardworking guy, insurance salesman, and he was always working. And he would always be at my games and stuff, but he would have night calls, and he was always doing stuff. And I just thought, okay, what job can I get that I can control? And it was like one of these perfect things. At 13, it just came together, or 11, I guess it was. Just came together, and I just knew. So I went to a college called Nyack College. It's actually not even they lost their accreditation a few years back.
Okay.
But it was a small Christian college. Coming out of Shawnee High School, where sports, I played sports, but I mean, we were ranked in every sport in the nation. And so I was like, I'm going to go to a small school where if I want to play something, I'm going to be able to play it.
Yeah.
And real small school, but it was affiliated with our church, with the Christian and Missionary Alliance denomination. So went and studied business there, and ended up getting a Bible minor coming out. And literally the whole goal was I was going to get a job at Morgan Stanley. That was just what I told myself. And funny enough, my dad's advisor ended up being a Morgan Stanley advisor. And my first job out of college was cold calling for them.
Nice.
Now, they didn't want to hire me. I went to a nothing school. I was a pretty naive kid coming out of college because I went to a really conservative Christian school. I didn't really have that college experience. I grew up in a home where it's like, you don't color outside the lines or you're going to burn in hell, right? The whole grace thing was lost on me growing up. And so it was one of those where I was a naive kid that didn't know what he didn't know. And I just said, listen, I don't care what I make. Just I'll work. I'll work. And so literally they put me in a closet. It was a closet with a sliding door, and literally sat at a desk in a closet and just made dials. And I was horrible at it. And dials upon dials upon dials upon dials. And here you are, almost 25 years later. Yeah. And I have my own outfit.
Yeah. So let's not just jump forward those 25 years. Take us a little bit through that story. So you're cutting your teeth, just telemarketing at this point, obviously getting the reps in though. So eventually you got decent, maybe we'll say at best at it, right? Yep. And then what was the next move from there? Did they actually hire you, or where'd you go from?
Yeah, so I literally got hired by Morgan Stanley, and I graduated in May of 2000, and so went through the training program. I was actually in Manhattan until about 30 days before the World Trade Center came down.
Wow.
I was sitting in the 70th floor of the South Tower where the building came around. So that's the other thing that's marked my life. I got in a horrible, car wreck in college that the cops were like, everybody in this van should be dead. I literally got out of the World Trade Center that came down 30 days prior to it coming down. I've seen like God go, okay, you're in the right spot. Like those have been the markers where he's going, keep going, And so I was just cold calling, through a series of, teams and, people leaving the teams and what have you. And I think the first big break really happened. It was about 5 years into the business. I was in a rock band at the time, and I was recording with the engineer that was the engineer for the Beatles' Imagine album. So a legit dude in Philly. Yeah. We started recording some demos doing this, and my boss at Morgan came to me. He goes, "Listen, you have all these hurdles that you haven't hit yet." And I wasn't hitting because this is the way my partnerships were structured. I didn't know if I had a good deal or not. I was just calling. And he's like, "Okay, you have to the end of the year, and you have to bring in a lot of money to hit these hurdles, or go be a rock star. Like, what are you going to do when you grow up, right?" And so it came down to the way my contract was, I had to bring in $50 million of assets in about 6 months. Now, now what people don't realize is the money supply has like quintupled since then.
Yeah.
There's a lot more people with money. Yeah. And in the business back then, the best of the best would bring in $10 million annually. The best.
Wow.
And so literally, I had just been married, and like my wife was in a dental school. We were dead broke, credit card debt. Like we were behind it. And I just said, listen, if I'm supposed to be in this, God's going to provide it. We prayed for it. My mom was praying for it. And we were working with Verizon retirees at the time. And Verizon announced this layoff that any manager could get paid $100,000 if they left. And they had to announce it by September 29th of the year, and they had to be off payroll by January 1. So by January 1, our team brought in $50,600,000.
Wow.
It was nuts. And my cut was enough to back Morgan Stanley for all the money they had given us and what have you. So that was kind of like the next big break. From there, our team, we moved together and went to Smith Barney and do a series of, 08s and all that. I found myself in 09 where I was just like, you know what? I had one teammate that had filed bankruptcy, another one that had some health issues, and they were doing stuff I didn't love. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm gonna jump. I'm going to do this on my own. I'm out. And in the process, basically Morgan Stanley gave everything to the senior guys. And I started over in 09 by myself, had a friend that was working for me, went from making a couple $100,000 to making like 75,000. And I was paying this guy, and just started grinding. And that's, for me, that was the big turning point where it was like, just like cool. Because it was like, God, you got to do this. I know I'm supposed to be doing this. How are you going to do it? And just worked, and it, started to come together. So, so it's been quite the road. I've started over 3 times, I guess.
Okay.
And the most recent was more recently when I left the big firms last summer. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, let's not. So I don't want to skip over the beginning part. So anybody who's looking to become a financial advisor, correct me if I'm wrong, and go a little deeper. But in the beginning, they basically give you like draws, right, that you owe back to the company. So even though you're selling these deals, you're really just paying them back, right?
When I started, they didn't even do it that way. When I started, it was eat what you kill. If you bring in accounts, great. If you don't, you don't.
You don't get paid.
And I was getting paid $10 an hour for 24 hours a week, and I was probably working 50 to 60 hours. And I'll say, in hindsight, I was not good. I probably only gave them 24 of decent hours because you don't know what you don't know, right? And I didn't have any coaching. The biggest thing I would tell a new advisor is find an advisor you trust and get a mentor. The guys I was working for, nice guys, they weren't good mentors. And it was like, Jason, just figure this out, go. Mm-hmm. And I'm a 22, 23-year-old kid that I've never done anything, I don't know about the stock market. I've never invested in, so you need to get a mentor. But nowadays they will pay a salary typically for 2 or 3 years at the big firms.
Okay.
And then after that, you have to have a certain amount you have to hit your hurdles and bring in enough assets to pay back the difference is kind of where it is. So for someone starting new, I would say go to the big firms, get your licensing, and then get out of the big firms as soon as you can. Get independent where your margins are much better, where there's less control of what you can do. I mean, that's a big thing with the big firms. They try and control how you invest for clients. They try and control. They try and control. Like, I was at Bank of America for a while. In the beginning, it was great, but then it was like, Jason, you need to do more banking. You need to sell more insurance. And I'm like, well, what if my client doesn't need it? It didn't matter. So for a new guy though, someone that's new to the business, go to the big firms because they'll put you through a training program. They'll get you licensed. And chances are after 2 or 3 years there, if you leave, they're not going to come after you and try and sue you. Right. You know what I mean? Okay. That's probably how I would approach it if I was to do it again. Okay. But yeah, back in the day, it was a grind. I'm fortunate because I knew I was supposed to do it.
Right.
So I made nothing for years. And it was just like, this is going to work. Yeah. It was,
as I Gary knew, would say eat shit, right?
Yeah. I knew it. I knew if I just grind harder than anybody else, eventually it was going to work. And finally did. But for young people, get your license, get a good mentor, someone you can trust, and then work hard. Nowadays, no one wants to work hard. The trainees that I see, they want to be out by 5 o'clock so they can go to happy hour or go to the game or whatever. Be the guy that shuts the lights down at 8 o'clock and be the guy that's in the office when I started over in 2009, I'd get to the office at 6 a.m. because I realized that the executives I wanted on the phone were in the office early and I could get ahead of their gatekeeper. And so I would do these pitches that the guy that was working for me and I developed, we called ourselves the 8-minute guys, and there was always some joke that someone would make about 8 minutes, right? But I would say, hey, just give me 8 minutes of your time. Right before you go to lunch, 11:51 to 11:59 this Wednesday, and I'll tell you in the 8 minutes what makes us different. And just having a pitch, but doing it early. Yeah, that was the key for me.
Yeah, love that. Now let's talk about the most recent transition. Yeah. So was there just a moment? I mean, you were with one of the bigger firms.
Yeah.
Was there like something you can pinpoint? Remember, and you were like, I just have to go do this for myself.
Yeah, there was a bunch of stuff, but. So I was like a corner office guy at Merrill locally. When I was recruited to go to Merrill, I built a team out there. Merrill was great. Bank of America was great. I really enjoyed my time there. But it got to the point, through COVID, it was tough. Couldn't be in the office. And then they started doing the forced vaccinations and all that. And I don't care what anybody's stance is on anything. You want to get a shot, get a shot. If you don't, you don't. No problem. But when you start telling me you have to do something, the way that Jason is wired, if you tell me this, I'm going to do that, right? Yeah. And that started to rub me the wrong way. And so I knew before then that eventually I'd want to be independent where I could, not have to worry about some of their rules. But then they started coming up with, you have to bring in a certain amount of new accounts. And the bigger you were, the more new accounts you had to bring in and new assets. And I'm going, does this benefit my client? If I've got 100 clients and now I have to get 100 more in the next 3 years, whose service is going downhill? The client's is. Yeah, then it was, you got to do banking. And when there was stuff that was good for my clients, we were like number 5 out of, 15,000 advisors in the country in our banking because it was a great product at the time. But then it was, you need mortgages for your clients. And I'm like, and if you don't have enough mortgages, we're going to cut the pay of your staff. And I'm going, but my clients are both, for the most part, wealthy or retired or whatever, they might not need a mortgage. Yeah. So you're going to penalize my people. And then it was, you need to sell some more life insurance. It was all these things. And then kind of the last one for me, that was the straw that really broke the camel's back, was in 2022. If you go back there, we knew that the Fed was going to raise interest rates. They told us we're going to raise rates. When interest rates go up, and here's a little investment 101. If interest rates go up, bond values go down. A bond is any vehicle where you're loaning money to a corporation, to a government, to a bank, whoever, and you're getting interest. Okay. So theoretically, if you give someone, $100 and they're giving you 5% interest, if overnight interest rates go up to 10% and someone can get $10 per 100, do they want your bond that's 5? No, because they can get double. So we're going into that year knowing bonds are going to get smashed. And the research team's going, you want to have your 60-40 portfolio with 40% bonds. And I'm going, they're going to get hammered. Yeah. I would rather have them in cash for that portion. I don't know what the stock market's going to do. The stock market dropped like 20%. But I remember I got a new client. I actually bought a vehicle from a guy, and a couple of years later, he calls me. He goes, remember we met? You bought your Jeep from me. I want to be a client, right? And the start of that year, I said, I can't invest your money right now. I have a bad feeling. We don't want to be in bonds. And the company basically was saying, well, if you can't get paid if you're in cash, if you put the money in cash. And I'm like, well, the client's paying me as a fiduciary to do what's in their best interest. So if they're okay with portion being in stocks, portion being in cash, you should be fine with it. And they're going, now, if you have that much, you have to either invest it or we'll still charge a fee, but you won't get paid from it.
Jesus.
And so I was like, you want to call my bluff? Well, screw you. I'll take a pay cut. So I literally started to open up separate accounts that were free accounts, moving cash into it and only charging. So like now it's costing me money to do the right thing. And most advisors are going 60-40 portfolio, just hold it. You're going to be just fine. And I'm like, you are playing chicken.
Yeah.
And not that my clients didn't lose any money. The market was a horrible year. Everything was down 20-25%. Bond stocks didn't matter. But that's when I realized like, corporate America, they are beholden to stockholders first and earnings first. Yep. And I don't think any advisor's out to screw anybody. I'm not suggesting that in any way. I think most are trying to do the right thing by people. But I just looked at that and I said, I need to get my personality as such. I need to get to a place where I control the narrative. I control how my clients invest. I control how the relationship is done. When we do reviews, I don't want someone giving me a template saying, well, you have to just say this and say it. No. No, I want to control it. And that was like, okay, I'm out. How am I going to do this? And then that kind of started the wheels turning. I had a partner at the time that we just had differing ideas on what it was going to be. And it just got to the point where I was like, I can't. I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah.
So hindsight, best thing I ever did.
Yeah, it seems like it.
From a client perspective, performance has been better. We can invest in things that the big firms wouldn't have allowed us to. Mm-hmm. Some of my biggest successes in investments over the last year have been stocks that were too small, where the big firms, from a legal perspective, wouldn't let someone invest, even though they're good companies.
Yeah.
So it's been awesome. From a quality of life perspective, I always thought the stock market stressed me out, and I realized it wasn't that.
Yeah.
It was the constraints. And so quality of life has been amazing for my staff that came with me. It's been amazing. It's been amazing. So when I was going independent, one of your buddies growing up, Modica, when you're going independent, you have to register, and it's a process. Yeah. You have to be what's called an RIA, Registered Investment Advisor, registered with the SEC. And so one of the best things I did when I was going through that process, I knew I wanted to have autonomy, have my own team, have my own structure, but I didn't want to have to worry about the compliance because I didn't know what I didn't know. And if I'm a client, do I want Jason learning on the job how to do compliance? No, right?
Right.
So I looked at it from what's best for me, my family, what's best for the client. At the time, I had firms all over Wall Street offering massive amounts of money. So one thing to know, if your advisor's leaving and going to another firm, he's getting a fat check to do it.
Sign-on bonus.
Like literally 7-figure checks, multiples. And I was like, I'm not taking any money to do it. If I'm doing it, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. It's going to cost me money because I got to pay my staff to come.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if clients are going to come. I'm hoping they're going to.
Yeah, right.
Right. And so one of the big magazines, Registered Rep, actually reached out because they're like, we heard you did this and there was no deal. Can we talk about this? Because no one does that, and it cost me a lot of money. Like I should have taken a check from the worldly perspective. But I literally looked around, shopped all the deals around, and I had a good relationship with some guys at Pine Valley Investments, a local RIA, and one of my good friends was one of the initial partners. And I just looked at the deal that they were offering and the autonomy they were going to give me as an advisor, but the support and the trading acumen and their expertise in hedging portfolios. And I looked at I was like, we can build something that's crazy special. So technically I'm a part of the Pine Valley Investments team, but I have kind of my own silo within it. So it's been a perfect scenario of having all the support that you would want of a tenured team behind you, but being able to do what you think is right for clients, find clients where you want, invest the way you want. So yeah, best thing I ever did.
Oh, I love that, dude.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
So let's jump into, we've briefly discussed this in the past on the golf course, but election year. Been a ton of volatility.
Yeah.
For folks who either are invested or aren't yet and are looking to do something, I know this is not advice.
Yeah.
Jason's
you guys disclaimer.
Disclaimer, this is not investment advice.
Yeah. Wanted to make sure, obviously to keep it all that dirty C word.
Exactly.
But as somebody who's been in it, what are just some things maybe to keep top of mind?
Yeah. So I'll give you points and you can draw your own conclusions. How about that?
Perfect.
So coming into this election, it's very interesting because the Fed just stopped their hiking cycle, right? So there's been job reports that come out every month that were, jobs numbers we kept hearing jobs beats, great jobs. Now, what people don't realize is about a week later, they revised them back downward. So the powers that be were putting a number out there, then a week later would go, it's actually 80,000 less, right? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And what we found out about a month ago was they actually overstated by 880,000 roughly jobs, which is like double the jobs that were found, right?
Sure.
And so the Fed then cut rates 50 basis points. The Fed has said from the beginning that inflation was their target, but then 6 months ago, Powell switched and said jobs. So jobs losses typically precede a recession, typically.
Yep.
So the media is going, the Fed cut rates 0.5 point. That's bullish for the market. It could help the market short term, but do you think they cut 0.5% because the economy's rip-roaring? Probably not.
Yeah.
So I look at the markets for fresh money right now, and I just say, okay, we're at all-time highs in the S&P 500. Is that a time to go, pedal to the metal long and buy everything? Maybe you want to be conservative in the way you deploy your capital. Pick and choose, right? Find companies. There's still companies that are great companies that are trading at a discount. So right now for clients, I'm going to look and say, okay, NVIDIA's been super hot. That's awesome. We don't want to chase it at these levels. If it pulls back, maybe. But are there companies that have been out of favor for whatever reason that if there is a stock market correction that's sizable, the air is already out of those tires? Those are the kinds of values that I look for fresh capital that's getting invested. If someone's younger, it doesn't matter as much because they have the time frame. Then it's dollar cost average. The most important thing I tell anybody, invest as soon as you can and max out that 401k if you have one as soon as you can. Because the math works out as such where even if you're only putting away a little bit when you're, 18 to 25, if you don't start till you're 30, you can put away a lot more money and you're not going to have as much. So for the younger investor, start a little bit every month. Don't put it all in at the same time, but a little bit every month. For the seasoned investor or someone that has maybe a bigger nest egg, maybe they've just retired and they have a chunk of money to invest, take your time getting it in. Interest rates are still high, so we can still get good yields on cash or bonds. Don't chase a hot market. It's the worst thing you can do. And that's what everybody gets FOMO, right?
Yep.
But when people get FOMO, whether it's the GameStop trades or Bitcoin for a while there, what happens to all the people during FOMO? They get smoked and takes them 15 years to make it back.
Yeah.
Because they get burnt at the wrong time and then they never want to get back in. I liken right now a lot to like the 2007, 2008 time frame. And I'm not suggesting that the market's going to do the same thing, but back then housing was through the roof, right? I had actually was looking for my first house at the time. So housing was going crazy. Everybody thought you couldn't miss in the stock market. And then the market dropped like 48%. I think it was at the worst, something crazy like that. And I saw so many people that sold at the bottom when they panicked. They bought at the top, sold at the bottom, never got back in. So I had one seminar that I was doing. It was a lunch event over in Morristown. I'm sitting there, and this one guy at the event, there's like 8 people. I keep the lunches pretty small so we could be educational. He's heckling me the whole time, just trying to pepper me with hard questions and just trying to bust my stones the whole time. And, I got out in 2008. I didn't lose any money. He comes out with one of those, and I'm like, fantastic. Well, this guy after the event comes over, and I said, so how you invested now? He goes, well, the problem is I never got back in. So yeah, he avoided the down.
Yeah.
But if you look at what happened from 10 to 24, you could have made your 3 or 4 times your money,
right?
Even if you were invested poorly, right? And so, so the best advice is take your time getting in. Don't chase the hot markets, but be methodical and stick to a plan. Too many people just hear about a stock and go buy it. Then are disillusioned when they lose money. If you don't have a plan, if you don't have a map, what are you doing? So it's if you don't know what you're doing, find a good advisor that can help you figure out and make those decisions. if you know what you're doing, great. Find a good index fund. If you're in your 401k, most 401ks are built with guardrails. And so they kind of force you into an investment that's somewhat applicable for your age category. So it's not hard to figure out how to do it, but don't chase here. Don't chase here. There's going to be different outcomes depending on who wins and who knows what the market's going to do. But I just look at it and say, we're at all-time highs. Do you want to buy at all-time highs?
Right.
I never want to buy at all-time highs.
Right. Yeah.
So err on the side of conservative.
Yeah, I like discounts all day. I always like the saying, especially with finances, it's time in the market, not time 100%. In the market. Yeah. It's like it seems so, such a entry level kind of a thought, but it's like, it carries a lot of weight.
The one, I don't know if it was Buffett, someone said, buy when there's blood in the streets. And so one of the best trades that I ever did was back in COVID. And it was like that March, the hedge fund guy, Bill Ackman, came out on TV. It was on CNBC. And literally I was out, I went out for a walk because I was just so like stressed out. And I'm walking and Ackman's on CNBC crying like a baby, whining, crying, the market's going to drop. And it turns out he shorted the market, then did that interview, made like $4 billion, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. But it was so bad that day I went in and just made some trades. Just bought a few trades. I bought NVIDIA. I bought some precious metals. I just bought some stuff and it's down. NVIDIA? And everything's just shot. Like popping. It was just lucky timing, perfect timing. Yeah. But it was so counterintuitive to everything my spirit wanted to do. And it was the best thing I ever did. Buy when everyone else is massively fearful and sell
when everybody's hot.
When everybody's hot. Yeah. When the FedEx driver comes to the door and says, hey, I got a stock tip for you. Get out of Dodge. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I call it the father-in-law effect. When my father-in-law comes to me with a hot tip,
I'm out.
Sell. Sell. Short the market, you know?
So
yeah, with Buffett, he another thing he said was like taking your emotions out of it, right? Yeah. Because same thing that you're saying, everybody's on it. Then I got to get it in the FOMO. Yep. I learned personally that lesson during COVID. Yep. I was getting heavy into it, day trading, doing, options, and it was going great because the market was all times high.
Options go great until they don't.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was going awesome for 3 months. I was like, why is everybody? I was like. And anyone who I did this to, I feel bad. I hope you didn't do it.
Father-in-law
I was like,
over here, right?
I was like telling everybody, like, "What, why aren't you doing these?" And I would like explain like how to do them, selling puts, like all these different things. And then then it wasn't great.
It happens.
That's why nobody's talking to you anymore.
Huh? And honestly, that's for me and my job.
I learned my lesson though.
I have so many clients that are like, I want to make more. I want to make more. I want to make more.
Yeah.
And I'm like, part of my job is to put the reins on the client so that they don't blow themselves up.
Yeah.
That's a more important job than trying to beat the market.
Right.
Right. And what people don't understand is, so we do a lot of active hedging using puts and such, which is kind of unusual in our space.
Yeah.
The big firms,
most advisors
very rare. Most advisors don't get into that space because it's hard for them to actively do it. I mean, it takes a lot of work. You need a lot of know-how. You have to have the software built to do it
too. Yeah.
Totally. But the math is very interesting because most people in their 401k, wherever, if I say, how do you choose your mutual funds? They say, I look at the track record. Mm-hmm. But I tell people math can lie to you. So use 2022 and 2023 as the example. Stock market was down 20%. 2022 came back 20% roughly in 2023. Yep. So mathematically, that mutual fund was flat, down 20, up 20. Now, if you invested $1 million in 2022 and it's down 20%, you're down to 800,000. If you're back up 20%, you're only back to 960.
Right.
You're still down 4%.
Yeah.
So my whole philosophy is don't chase it, be down less than everybody else, and you don't need to make as much to make more than everybody else. That's how the math works.
Yeah.
But everybody wants to beat the market. Yeah. Now, years like this year, we've had some trades. We've done very well versus the market. But that shouldn't be the target, in my opinion. The target should be lose less, because if you have more when everybody's freaking out, then it's much easier for you to redeploy because you haven't gotten killed. And don't invest what you can't afford to lose.
Yeah.
That too.
You know what I mean?
Luckily, this was just kind of like play my so I learned my lesson.
You got to invest for your time frame. So that's the other thing. Make sure that if you're getting close to retirement or whatever the case is, make sure you have a year or two of money that's safe so that your risk stuff has time to go through the cycle.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to ask this, and we're going to jump into golf because we both love talking about that. Can you tell the viewers, like, what folks who maybe either aren't working with an advisor or they're in the market for one, maybe either what are some things to look for or what are red flags that to let them know like, hey, that's not the one, interview somebody else.
Yes. The first thing I would say is make sure your advisor is a full fiduciary. That's a big term right now. Basically, that means I have to do what's in my client's best interest above myself. The way that we've structured it is our client sees the fee that we charge no matter what investment we put them into. And I think that's critical because there's a lot of insurance products, there's some mutual funds, there's other things that advisors can do where the client won't see the fee. They're embedded. I'll give you a great example. I met a woman, was referred in, and she had something called A-share mutual funds. And she's like, my advisor doesn't even get paid on this. I don't pay him anything. It's, he's just, these A-share mutual funds pay him over 5% up front, right? And if you keep that same fund for 10 or 15 years, then eventually it's cost effective to do it. But she's thinking he's calling out of the goodness of his heart. And the mutual fund company's paying me for bringing you to them.
Right. Sure.
No, it's coming out of your performance.
Right.
Period. So if the advisor can't clearly state how they're compensated up front, that's a huge, huge red flag. If they say, well, I'm compensated by the investments, huge red flag. You want to see your fees. You want to see your fees because otherwise there are products out there. There are some insurance products that if I use them, I can do it in that fee-based structure. If I took a commission on it, the commission might be 5 to 7 times the amount of money up front. And then there could be a conflict of interest. So that's the first thing. The second thing is trust your gut, trust your instinct. If you're in front of someone, you feel like they're super salesy and that you get that, that used car sale vibe, don't go with them because your friend said to go with them. You need somebody, I was some of my reels I was doing, I was talking about it. You need someone that you feel like you can talk about hard things because money's hard. You're emotional with your money. I talk to clients about things that they probably only talk to their spouse about. So you need someone that you feel like gets you who you are. You need someone whose values and morals line up with yours, however that is. All those things are very, very important because that advisor is going to be speaking life, and there's the Bible says there's power in the tongue for life and death. That advisor is going to be speaking life or death into you, and you want someone you feel confident and comfortable with those conversations. So those are two of the biggest. You would assume that most advisors know what they're doing. It's not always the case. You would hope that's the case, but to me the biggest ones I see are the fee-based thing and just comfort level with the person.
Makes sense and great advice. Now let's jump into the golf because we both thoroughly enjoy that. It's an addiction. So I feel like I do a good job of leveraging it and using it for business, but I feel like you do an exceptional job of that. So talk about what got you into golf and then how you use that in your business. Yeah,
I always wanted to golf. My dad was a baseball guy. We never really golfed much growing up, but probably in my 30s, mid-30s, I just picked it up and said, I'm going to start golfing. Got really into it when we had moved and there was a golf course behind my house, so it made it real easy and approachable. But what I figured out quickly in our business, much like your business, it's all relational. And 4 hours on a golf course with somebody, you learn a lot about who they are, about their character, who they are as people, what they're looking for. And there's an instant camaraderie. Like, if you go to a member guest tournament, doesn't matter where it is in the country, after the first round, when you go back to the clubhouse for your drinks or for food or whatever, anybody in there is looking at you as a brother already. Yep. And I realized, well, this is a brotherhood that I can find people. Clearly, you have to have a couple bucks if you're golfing. And I just knew early on, I'm like, I can meet a lot of people doing this. Interestingly enough, I don't get as many clients golfing as you would think. Where I've actually found more value is when I find someone that's a prospective client that they like to golf and I take them to my course and you can just hang out for 4 or 5 hours and chat, figure out who they are. And they get to see, people come into the office, they see Jason, the investment guy. I think what's really important for the client, for them to see Jason, the family guy, Jason with 2 daughters, Jason with the wife who's a dentist, and Jason who serves at church. Because once they feel that, then they'll know more about you. That's been the biggest thing is it's a quick way to build a relationship with someone that you might not have a relationship otherwise. So for me, I just love the game. It's maddeningly frustrating, but like us, we hit it off because we both did the church thing and the golf thing, and it was just an easy brotherhood that happens immediately. That's me and Modica, my business partner. That's where it was formed, just spending time together on the golf course.
It's
super important.
It's such a good tool too. Like I say, a lot of times I use it to disqualify people because you'll spend that time and right away you're like, man, our values don't align. they're doing this and that the whole time. They cheat in the game, whatever it is.
Kicking the ball.
Yeah, and they're breaking clubs over. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna hit some bad shots too. Like, relax. And it just reminds you, like, people don't realize that they're all parallels, right? Like, so all right, a deal blows up in business. How are you gonna? We're gonna be snapping clubs and freaking out over that.
100%.
Right.
And God forbid they drink too much. Like, we might do some happy hours. So can I trust you to not say the wrong things or put us in weird situations? So I've always thoroughly enjoyed, and to your point too, like, you're definitely around, a certain called demographic or avatar when you're at most of these country clubs, because it's typically people that are a little bit more affluent. They're doing well either in their business or they're a business owner. And those are the levels of people I know we like to be around, because they have great ideas or good insight, or they're doing things in their family or personal life that we're not. And it's just like success leaves clues, right? At the end of the day.
And I think you and I are wired a lot in that we love to see other people succeed. I actually, I want to make lots of money. Who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
For me, though, if I can close a deal for somebody else, I just love that. I get off on that. I'm like, that's awesome, And I love being around these guys that I can be finding the pieces and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to connect this guy with this guy and that guy with that guy and that girl with that girl. And boom, let's make some deals happen. I just love that about the game of golf as well. You can figure out how you can make other people successful. And it's just it's a different kind of joy. It's a different kind of vibe you get doing that stuff. I love that, though. Connecting people is my favorite thing in the world. I kind of figured that out early. If I can connect enough people and make them successful, eventually they're going to be an advocate.
Yeah.
Eventually they're going to be an advocate.
100%.
People always remember that stuff.
100%.
The introduction you made, the event you invited them to, whether or not they go. People love to be included, and even it's not always even business, championing people on the golf course, like people that are average or not that great. They hit the couple good shots. You give them little tips, like they just take that with them forever.
Yep, no doubt. No doubt.
So let's, now we got a little bit more time. We don't have to ask the final question just yet. So,
oh man, high pressure.
Yeah.
Josh, come on, dude. Yeah. It's already a tough question.
Yeah, it's not. You'll be fine. So just in general with your client base, like, are you working with people nationally? Or are you kind of specifically in a region?
No, we're nowadays with technology, it's super easy to be all over the place. So I've actually got international clients all over the country. I've got as far, I guess, probably Kenya is probably the furthest away.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We have people all over the place. At the big firms, their focus is clients that have over $250,000. And so one of the things I wanted to do, coming out of that is obviously every advisor wants big clients, right? But I wanted to build a team around me where if one of my clients has a kid, or if there's an up and coming exec that's trying to learn to save, and they don't have those levels where if you have $200,000 at Merrill, the advisor doesn't want to talk to you because they don't get paid. And so I wanted to build it out with some other advisors on my team where we can service any account. And that's been one of the most rewarding things. Financially as well as relationally, because if you can help anybody and find a spot for anybody, there's no one out there that's trying to do that. Everybody's so niche oriented.
Yeah.
And so that's how we've built it out. So obviously, the bulk of my clients are business owners, people that are retired, higher net worth individuals. But then we've got a section of the team that's focusing on people that are just growing their businesses, people that are just trying to start, investing and getting that next generation of money before it builds. So nationwide, we can service any sort of account. Anybody needs help. My thing is that this is the gift God's given us is financial literacy. So the least I can do is kind of be faithful to that and kind of serve in that realm.
Absolutely. Yeah, people need it. It is so true because, like I said, I run into financial advisors all the time, and that is the biggest turnoff for me is when I ask, like, what's your ideal client? And they're like, I don't really deal with anybody that has under $5 million in liquid assets. I'm like, who do you know?
Yeah.
Like, I have a pretty big network, and I know people that have money, but like $5 million liquid, like you're bottlenecking yourself there by only being able to help a very, very specific avatar.
Yeah, and what you'll find is most of those people are lying to you.
Yeah.
They want you to think that's all, but if you come with them with $500,000, you're going to pay $5,000 of fees or whatever the number is that year. They'll take you in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But one of my largest prospects, dude, he's probably got 25 or 30 million investable assets.
Wow.
I got a call from him because we have another advisor friend that we both know and met him at a golf course, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't have enough money for that guy." So do you have minimums, or can I talk to you? And literally this other guy had built up the way he looks, buy multi-million-dollar houses, has a couple $1 million boat, buying all the couple $100,000 cars. This guy literally thought he wasn't enough to qualify to be in it. I'm like, you've got this guy's like
more money than him.
$20 million.
Yeah.
And a lot of advisors, to your point, they disqualify themselves from the relationship. The other thing I'll say is the biggest referral I ever got, I got from a client that had $129,000. She referred a friend that inherited a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
And so it's like, you
what?
You never know, but you got to be good relationally. And now you also set the expectation. If someone comes to me with $30,000 or $40,000, I'm not going to call them once a week to talk about the portfolio, right?
Absolutely.
You set expectation, but goodwill never goes unanswered.
Yeah.
Couldn't
agree more. That's people ask me that all the time with the payroll. They're like, will you do like a one-man shop? Isn't that too small? And I'm like, no, absolutely. I would love to help them. And to your point, you never know who they know. It's like helping that one employee person or the S Corp that's just the sole entrepreneur. They probably have other entrepreneur friends too, right? And if they're like, man, Justin's doing right by me, and I'm sure he'll do great with your 25 or 50 or 100 employee company. Because it's always, people like how you make them feel, right? So the fact that you show that you care, the fact that you educate them, you're picking up the phone, you never talk to them like they're lesser than, greater than. And it's like they want to shout your name from the rooftops, especially in your line when they're seeing a little return too. And they're like, this guy truly knows what he's talking about.
That's a great point though. We can remember some of the conversation we have today because it's on film. Mm-hmm. If we didn't film this and we remembered back in 6 months, we might remember a third of the things that in detail what we talked about. When I talk to someone about financial services stuff, their eyes glaze over within 20 minutes. But are we going to remember the vibes we had sitting here chilling, enjoying the time? You remember the feeling. Mm-hmm. People remember how you made them feel. They don't necessarily remember what you say. So if you can leave them with that good vibe, it's going to work.
Good vibes worldwide, baby.
Exactly.
Boom, worldwide.
So let's, by the way, we do have some awesome swag here too. So we had to get this in the video.
No one ever throws away a Yeti.
No, that is is facts.
Yeah, I mean, you 10 years down the line, you'd be like, remember that guy Jay?
Yeah, I think my great grandbabies are going to inherit this thing. It's going to be part of the family crest now. But I think we are getting to that point. So hit Jason with that last brain teaser.
Gotcha. All right, Jason.
All right.
So give us either a mistake, a misstep, a hurdle that you faced, early on in your life that shaped you to who you are today, and then something that you look back and say, man, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now.
Biggest hurdle I had was 2009 when I left a much larger team and just did it on my own. That when I took that massive pay cut I talked about before. Obviously the biggest hurdle, because my wife was just finishing dental school. We're just having our kids, I've got a baby, and all of a sudden I've got I don't know how I'm going to pay my mortgage. Like, how are we going to figure this stuff out? It was the first time I bet on Jason. And what I realized is the best bet I'll ever make is on me, period. And went out, bought a couple of custom suits that I couldn't afford. And I said, well, we're going to do this. Let's rock, And from there, that's what kind of kicked everything off. So by far and away the best hurdle, I mean, the hardest hurdle, but the best thing that ever happened, because I can look back and go, I am who I am today because of those moments when you're sweating it out at night and you don't know what you're going to do, and you're just praying and you're just hoping, and you say, you know what? Who do I want to be? What's the perfect Jason picture? What's the perfect family situation? What's the perfect picture of what that is? And then you reverse engineer it and say, every morning you get up and go, I don't know financially I'm in bad shape right now, but what would that Jason do in this situation? Well, he would get up, go to the gym. He'd do his quiet time, read his Bible. He would be with his kids, and then he would grind. That's what he would do. When you get in front of a client, what would that Jason do? Well, that Jason would sit there and say, this is what you need to do with your money. I'm going to get you there. He wouldn't be like, well, the market might go up, the market might go down, right? You got to treat it. How would that perfect situation, how would that person handle the situation? And that was a life-changing way, for my life in general was that moment.
That's awesome.
That is fantastic advice. And more advice for you guys, because it aligns with everything we're talking about. Do you know what the best investment that you can make is? It's in yourself, which is the point we're getting at there. So, Jason, we really do. We appreciate you being here, sharing so much knowledge. That hour flew by quick.
I didn't know anybody would ever want to. My wife, she's like, no one wants to hear you for an hour. So I appreciate it.
I can't wait. You better show me when your wife is watching us eating the popcorn, enjoying it. Shout out. But we really do. We appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you.
Well, of course, coughing at the end. And friends, we appreciate you viewing, being a part of this. As always, have the best day ever, and we'll see you next time.
Best day ever, fam.